Back around 1880, or maybe a little bit earlier, this fine photograph was taken at Devonport Park. It's taken from more or less outside the lodge, and the lodge is still there today, and the entrance is still very much as it was then today. It looks like the statue here has been removed. But the main interest is on the other side of the road. And thanks to someone on Facebook who brought it to my attention, I'm now going to bring it to your attention. We can see in the distance here the Devonport lines, which was once the defence of the dockyard. So back in the day, if we looked this way, we would see green field, an open area, a killing field with guns and musket loops facing more or less eastwards and towards us. This is the lodge today. It's rather lovely, isn't it? I remember back in the 70s it was a bit of a wreck, but happily it's been restored and must be something like it was when it was originally put here. The entrance is much as it was in the photograph, with the railings more or less the same, possibly exactly the same, or with perhaps some minor alteration. It all looks rather grand. And when we see the railings and the lodge together, it looks pretty good. Several people on Facebook have drawn my attention to a little bit of what may be left of the Devonport lines still existing today. And if they're right, it's just across the road. Very often in Plymouth, a city which is so good at destroying its heritage, we can occasionally find little bits that somehow have escaped. So we now have to cross the road, and today there won't be any horses. No horses, that's good. No horses. And I'm told the secret is behind the bus stop. And here it is. 1, 2, 3, and 4 rather lovely cast iron posts. These have got to relate to the latter days of the dock lines. Back in the day, just the other side of where I'm standing on my left was the open area of the dock lines known as the killing field. This would have been a place where there was nowhere for the enemy to hide. No bushes, no large stones, no big trees, no buildings. So if the enemy, and that would be the French I'm afraid to say, did aim to attack the dockyard, they would have nowhere to hide, the area being kept completely open. However, just on my left, looking at some other older photographs, there was a severe drop, and I'm wondering if that is why those posts were put there. Today, behind the bus stop is a rather ugly fence. It's quite stark in its ugliness when compared to the superbness of those 4 original ones, but it still provides the same purpose. We can see here there is a slope down to the football field, and I believe back in the day this was a more of a severe gradient. If we were here back in the day, that's the word, isn't it? Looking here, we would see the Devonport lines, a mixture of earthworks and stonework. We would see possibly 2 or 3 groups of 2 cannon facing eastwards and northwards. This is the direction it was thought the French could come. Also, there would be musket loops in the stonework. And yet today, it is lost. But let's just go and see if we can find a little bit of it that's still there. So we can see here the large open area. That is the killing fields of the Devonport lines. And there are 2 footpaths running across it. The one going left to right more or less follows what is King's Road today, and on the right, on the original photograph, you can see musket loops in the stonework. Looking today, we can see what remains. If we look carefully, you can see a wall, a hump maybe is the better word, underneath the light stands, and that is the top of the defensive works. So we've got to take out from the football pitch many feet of earth to restore the topography as it was. Just so those of you who no longer live in Plymouth can get an idea of where we are, this is the lodge. This is the road up to Stoke. Here we have what was the Devonport Technical School. And this is King's Road with the College of Further Education just visible in blue in the distance. Here we can see where the ground has been made up to make a nice flat football field. Once you get your eye into understanding the landscape, it becomes quite easy to read it. Here we have the CFE in blue, but look on the right, this huge open area. This is part of, as I said earlier, the killing field. And also this area, certainly until the early 1900s, maybe up to the First World War, was used for absolutely huge military festivals. Thousands of people would come here to see these parades with horses, soldiers, and all the paraphernalia that went with them at that time. So it's a very large flat area, and once we're looking, look now in the distance and we can see the elevation suddenly getting higher, and this is earth piled onto the stonework of the Devonport lines. Behind that earth are musket loops. And again, here we are, this CFE, which will help some of you gain a handle on of where I am. So it's the CFE here and the lines on the right. We can see here the open area really well, and you may just be able to detect the stonework line on the far right running along there, and that is what we saw just now, with the musket loops within it and the earth piled over the top. It's quite a thought to think that when these lines were in use, of course, these trees wouldn't have been here because the enemy could easily hide behind them. But then there would have come the time when the lines fell in military significance, and people thought, let's make this a nice area. And so, of course, trees were planted. Some of you may find it interesting to know that Devonport Park which was also part of the Devonport lines, was demilitarised by public subscription. It was a very early example of crowdfunding. The fortifications were removed, or if not, put under tons of earth. And we have to wonder what still could exist under Devonport Park. Not wishing to miss out on any heritage at all, we have the stone overbridge here, or is it an underbridge? I think it's an underbridge. It's an underbridge, isn't it? That connected the Ocean Quay Atlantic cruising terminal to Devonport Station, which is sort of where the CFE is now, and from there onwards to London Waterloo. While we're thinking of this, we must not forget the tragic loss of what I believe was Britain's worst train accident that left Stonehouse Ocean Quay Station, Richmond Walk, where the Mayflower Marina is now, and in an effort to beat the speed of the Great Western route from Millbay Station, came off the rails as it entered the curve at Salisbury Station, and so occurred a massive and tragic railway accident with many, many killed. I am now walking the lines. I am walking the dock lines. Now this path here may look odd, but I don't actually think it is, but it is not far off an older path. There was a pathway here called Church Way, and it basically linked the bottom of Devonport Hill right through Stoke down, I think, eventually to Swilly. But I believe what we have here today is the remains of the path that connected up the post-World War II prefabs that were in this area. So 1946-ish, we would here be in the centre of a little town of prefabs. And all that remains today is this, which is nothing. However, this is a huge open area. We can see it's at an angle. If you look to the horizon, you see that the ground is coming up from left to right, and this would be correct in order to make the enemy infantrymen skylight, which means appear against a sky as they came over the top, and the defenders within the Devonport lines would get a clear look at them. The angles were very carefully worked out so that it made life harder having to go up a hill with a backpack and all your stuff, and also more importantly, you would be outlined against a sky as a silhouette. This would make it very easy for those who would be inside the lines that way to see you against the sky and shoot you. So this is an almost perfect example of a killing field, which in military technology is called a glacis. And for those who need a bit more reference as to where we are, Stonehouse Creek used to be down there, with Devonport High for boys sort of behind the white van, and the Royal Naval Hospital somewhere by that white car that's just gone past. And of course, Stonehouse Creek is no longer affected by high and low tide. It was filled in over a period of time until we got to the 60s when it was all done. The broad sweep of this area can very well be seen here in this scan. Totally open area now, windswept. Had the French invaded, this would be an area of absolute carnage. And we can see Stonehurst Creek nicely as it was directly in front of us. We're now coming to the end of the killing field, and we're now coming close to Devonport Hill. And Devonport Hill is also extremely interesting, as we shall see. Going down the stairs, we come out at Devonport Hill with Stonehouse Bridge down the bottom of the hill. On our left here we have a rubbish dump, which is the Plymouth term for heritage. This entrance here, used in World War II as an air raid shelter, was actually built in the 19th century as a way to convey soldiers. You can see the original handrail just here, was to convey soldiers under Devonport Hill in times of attack. And there was one directly the same on the other side of the road. Halfway up Devonport Hill, we now have this archway blocked up on our left. Behind this is a flight of stairs, and the stairs take us down to a considerable part of the underground works of the Devonport lines. Back in the day, you could have quite possibly accessed the whole of underneath the brick fields from this entrance here today. But unfortunately, access is no longer possible, and it runs basically underneath the dental hospital and the minor injuries unit. We are now crossing Devonport Hill, and we're looking up the hill with Stonehouse Bridge behind us and Devonport in front of us. Back in the day, I've said it again, just around this area would be a drawbridge. Can you imagine such a thing? That could isolate Devonport if needed in the event of an attack. But today, we're looking on the left-hand side here. By the way, a lovely house at Bluff Battery is set within the battery above us, lost within the vegetation. And of note, while we're here, if we can see them, are musket loops. I don't know if you can see them, the sun is not our friend here, but you can just see them like a vertical black mark. But today, here we go, we're going into a trench down there. Now the steps we see here are a repeat of the steps we entered on the other side of the road, being a way to communicate soldiers under Devonport Hill to the trench system and the fortifications at Mount Wise if under attack. And look what we have here. Where did we see this just now? Exactly the same, isn't it? So here we go. We can see the same thing as we saw just now. Not quite as bad a rubbish dump. And we're now walking the other side of the dock lines. Look how that cliff's been cut, or probably modified from what was there originally. It's very deep, and this would further isolate Devonport in the event of an attack. There's a retaining wall here, and we're walking down it now. It's very quiet here. All of a sudden the traffic noise has stopped. Peaceful, quiet, lovely. And of course, back in the day, again, I can't stop saying that, the vegetation would not be here. This would be as clean as a whistle, because there couldn't be anywhere left for any enemy to hide behind. So the landscape today is totally unlike it would be today. The clues being the cliff face, the ditch, the passage under the road, the cast iron stanchion at the top, and the lovely stonework on my right here. Let's see where we go. We go down here. It's interesting to know what was this entrance for here, look. It's a proper little place, look, with a lead doodah to take a bar or something fitted in the stonework. I think this must have been a sty for people to sort of walk over. And we're slowly coming out now, and we're going to leave 1870, 1880, and we're back in the modern world with the William Yard in front of us and Richmond Walk Industrial Estates just next to us now. So let's not forget, Devonport lines were defence against land attack and sea attack. Land defence, coastal defence, and the Devonport lines were much, much, much bigger than the small section we have here. They run from here all the way to through Richmond Walk to Mutton Cove, and from here heading the other way all the way around Devonport Park to where Marlborough Street here, Marlborough Street is today, and that's a huge area, but that's for another time, and they're not as visible there as they are here. Halfway up Devonport Hill, we can very well see the inclined land that forms the southern edge of the killing field of Devonport lines. We see how it goes up, 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 in up. So we'd have the armament at the top with the idea that the enemy would invade coming up the hill. And this is approximately halfway up Devonport Hill. It's a very fine view today on a summer evening at the top where the musket lines would be, and other ordnance looking over, in this case, Stonehouse Creek, because of course back in the day, I said it again, the enemy ships could come up here quite easily. Some of you who do not live in Plymouth anymore may find it interesting to learn that the new Devonport Dental School is just here now, and that trains dental professionals So that's a good thing. And the view down here, we can see very well now, it's Devonport High School for boys and Plymouth Albion Rugby Ground. Here we can see the height of the Devonport Line fortifications. So take away the earth and behind here will be musket loops. On the top would have been gun positions. Underground, communication systems, magazines. And in this area now, it would have been linked to that archway we saw in Devonport Hill, which is just that way. But again, as it's Plymouth, it's all forgotten, all lost, unwanted, unvalued. Many people will think this is a hedge. It's just been exposed recently due to works or laying a pipe, but it's not a hedge at all. It's the top of the ramparts of the dock lines. We can see so well here how this land has a hidden history. And that history lies mostly intact below my feet. I hope you have found this little film of interest. It brings to you a little of the heritage of our city that most of the official, openings, systems, places, dare I say museum, dare I say box, seem to forget. There's more heritage here in virtually the whole of the box. There's years of it. This area made the world. This area made the world pink. If you remember when you were at school maybe in the 60s doing looking at maps, 2/5 of the map was pink. And that pinkness came from the area in which I'm standing. Yet it is something that officially Plymouth seems to want to forget. It's forgotten it always. When I first started doing my research with cyber heritage in 1996, I had the same lack of interest from the museum, apart from one or two notable people who were excellent and helped me immensely. I won't mention their name so they don't get embarrassed. But it was the same basic lack of interest as it is today. And even with our multi-million-pound box, they cannot bring themselves to show the world the heritage of Plymouth. Plymouth made the world. I'm not being jingoistic, it's just a fact of history. Plymouth made the world we know today. Thank you for watching.